Excuse me, the gray-haired man said, gripping my arm with trembling fingers. I know this sounds strange, but I need to thank you. I stared at him in confusion. We were standing in the middle of a crowded grocery store parking lot. I had never seen him before in my life. Thank me for what? I asked. The man smiled through watery eyes. For the money you gave me 15 years ago. My stomach dropped. I think you've mistaken me for someone else. No, he whispered. I haven't. That money saved my daughter's life. I felt the blood drain from my face. Because I had never given that man a single dollar. And at that exact moment, I realized someone had been using my name. Someone very close to me. Someone I trusted more than anyone. My spouse. My name is Daniel Parker, and at 63 years old, I thought I knew everything about my wife. I was wrong. Very wrong. And that stranger's gratitude was about to destroy 38 years of marriage. The morning had started like every other Tuesday. My wife, Linda, sat at the kitchen table with a calculator. Again. For months, she'd been obsessing over retirement numbers. Every breakfast sounded the same. We can't retire yet, she said while studying spreadsheets. I sighed. We've been saying that for 5 years. Because it's true. We have savings. Not enough. We own our home. That doesn't matter. I rubbed my temples. The conversation exhausted me. I'd spent 37 years working as a school maintenance supervisor. Early mornings. Late nights. Weekend emergencies. Everything had been for one dream. Retirement. Fishing trips. Road trips. Lazy mornings with coffee. Maybe finally visiting Scotland, where my grandfather had been born. Simple dreams. Nothing extravagant. Yet every time I mentioned retirement, Linda found another reason we couldn't afford it. Unexpected taxes. Market uncertainty. Healthcare costs. Inflation. Something. Always something. That morning was no different. We need at least another 3 years, she said. 3 years. I nearly dropped my coffee mug. That's realistic. Linda, I'll be 66. So I'm tired. She looked away. For a brief moment, something crossed her face. Guilt. Fear. I couldn't tell. Then it disappeared. We're doing the responsible thing, she said quietly. I wanted to argue. Instead, I grabbed my keys. I'm going to the grocery store. She nodded without looking up. As I left, I noticed something strange. The moment the front door closed, she immediately picked up her phone and lowered her voice. I couldn't hear the conversation. But I saw her expression. Nervous. Almost panicked. At the time, I ignored it. I wish I hadn't. An hour later, I was loading groceries into my truck when the stranger approached me. His name was Robert Gaines. 70 years old. Thin. Kind eyes. The type of face that instantly seemed trustworthy. After thanking me, he reached into his wallet and pulled out a photograph. A young woman sat in a hospital bed. Beside her stood a teenage boy. Both smiling. My daughter Emily, Robert said. I stared at the picture. Unsure what I was supposed to be seeing. Sir, I'm sorry, but I really don't know you. His smile faded. Confusion replaced it. What do you mean? I've never met you. He blinked several times. Then slowly reached into his coat pocket. He unfolded an old envelope. The paper looked ancient. Yellowed. Worn. Carefully preserved. On the front was a handwritten note. My breath caught. Because the signature at the bottom said, Daniel Parker. My signature. Or at least an almost perfect copy. Robert pointed at it. You paid for Emily's surgery. I felt dizzy. No. You don't remember? No, Robert. I swear to you. I never wrote this. His face turned pale. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he handed me the letter. I read it. Every word. The writer explained that a private donation was being made anonymously. No repayment expected. No publicity desired. Just help. At the bottom was my forged signature. And the amount. $87,000. My knees nearly buckled. $87,000. 15 years ago. At exactly the same time Linda had convinced me to postpone retirement planning because our savings weren't growing fast enough. Suddenly my chest tightened. A terrible thought entered my mind. No. It couldn't be. Could it? Robert interrupted my thoughts. There were others too. I looked up. What? Families like mine. What do you mean? He hesitated. Your foundation. My heart stopped. My what? The Parker Family Foundation. I stared at him. Unable to breathe. Unable to think. Unable to understand. Because I had never owned a foundation. Not now. Not ever. Robert looked equally confused. You really don't know? No. He swallowed hard. Then somebody has been pretending to be you for a very long time. The world suddenly felt unstable beneath my feet. Robert reached into his wallet again. This time he handed me a business card. An address. A building downtown. The foundation office used to be here. Used to be. I stared at the card. My hands shaking. Questions exploded inside my head. Who created the foundation? Where did the money come from? Why use my name? And most importantly, why had Linda spent 15 years insisting we couldn't afford retirement? Because deep down, I already knew the answer. I just wasn't ready to face it. That evening, I drove home with the business card in my pocket. Linda was waiting in the kitchen. The moment she saw my face, her expression changed. Not concern. Not confusion. Fear. Raw fear. And before I could say a single word, her phone rang. She looked at the screen. And suddenly went completely white. Then she whispered something that made every hair on my body stand up. Oh no. She wasn't talking to me. She was talking to herself. And for the first time in 38 years, I realized my wife had been hiding a secret big enough to ruin both our lives. Linda stared at her phone as if it had become a loaded weapon. The color had completely drained from her face. I had seen my wife angry. I had seen her heart broken. I had seen her terrified when our son broke his arm at 12 years old. But I had never seen this look before. This was panic. Pure panic. The phone continued ringing. She didn't answer. Instead, she pressed the side button and silenced it. Then she looked up at me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. 38 years of marriage hung silently between us. Finally, I reached into my pocket. I placed the old business card on the kitchen table. The moment she saw it, her breathing stopped. That was all the confirmation I needed. You know what this is? It wasn't a question. Linda lowered herself into a chair. Slowly. Like her legs had stopped walking. Daniel. Who is Robert Gaines? Her eyes widened. I felt my stomach twist. She knew that name too. Oh God. How do you know him? She looked away. The silence felt louder than shouting. Linda. Tears appeared instantly. Not a few tears. The kind that come when someone realizes the truth has finally arrived. And there is no escape. I never wanted you to find out like this. My heart started pounding. Find out what? She covered her face. For several seconds she couldn't speak. Then she whispered the words that shattered everything. The money was real. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. What money? The donations. My hands clenched into fists. The Parker Family Foundation. She nodded. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You created it. Another nod. Using my name? Yes. The room spun. For years I had blamed inflation. Bad investments. Economic downturns. Every excuse imaginable. Meanwhile, my wife had secretly created a foundation in my name. And apparently given away huge amounts of money. Without my knowledge. Without my permission. I slammed my palm onto the table. Why? Linda flinched. I can explain. Then explain. Her shoulders shook. You remember Sarah? The name hit me like lightning. Sarah. Our daughter. The daughter we lost. 20 years ago. At 16. Leukemia. The worst year of our lives. The worst year anyone could imagine. The memories rushed back instantly. Hospital rooms. Chemotherapy. Hope. Then despair. Then silence. A funeral no parent should ever attend. My anger paused. Just for a moment. What does Sarah have to do with this? Linda began crying harder. Everything. I sat down across from her. My pulse racing. She took a deep breath. After Sarah died, I couldn't function. I remembered. Of course I remembered. There were months when Linda barely got out of bed. Months when grief swallowed her whole. I felt guilty every day, she continued. Why? Because I kept thinking maybe another doctor could have saved her. My throat tightened. Linda. I know it wasn't rational. Her voice cracked. But grief isn't rational. I couldn't argue with that. Because she was right. Grief changes people. Sometimes permanently. She wiped her eyes. One day I met a woman at the hospital. I listened carefully. Her son needed surgery. She looked down at her hands. They couldn't afford it. A chill ran through me. I couldn't stop thinking about Sarah. The pieces were slowly beginning to connect. I gave them money. How much? $5,000. I blinked. 5,000 wasn't a small amount. But it wasn't life-changing either. Not compared to what Robert had described. And then. The boy survived. She smiled sadly. The mother sent me a letter 6 months later. Linda opened a drawer. Inside was a worn envelope. She handed it to me. The paper looked old from years of handling. I unfolded it. The letter was simple. Thank you for helping save my son. Thank you for giving him a future. Thank you for giving our family hope. I felt emotion rising unexpectedly inside me. Linda watched me. When I read that letter, it was the first time since Sarah died that I felt something besides pain. My anger weakened. Just a little. Then what happened? I helped another family. She swallowed. And another. I stared at her. With our money. Yes. Our retirement savings. Tears filled her eyes again. Yes. The answer hurt. Because while I understood her grief, she had never asked me. Never trusted me. Never included me. Years of decisions had been made behind my back. How much, Linda? She didn't answer. How much? Her lips trembled. Almost everything. The words sucked the air from the room. I felt physically sick. Everything. Over 15 years. My chest tightened. How much? She finally whispered the number. $940,000. I couldn't speak. Nearly $1 million. Gone. I stood up so fast my chair crashed backward. No. It's true. No. My voice echoed through the kitchen. For the first time in decades, I was genuinely furious. Not annoyed. Not frustrated. Furious. You gave away nearly $1 million. She nodded. And lied to me every year. Another nod. I paced the room. Trying to breathe. Trying not to explode. Trying to understand how the woman I loved could do this. Then another thought hit me. A terrible thought. I turned around. Wait. Linda froze. The call. What? The call that scared you. Her expression changed instantly. Fear returned. Real fear. Bigger than before. My stomach dropped. What aren't you telling me? She looked like she wanted to disappear. Linda. There was one more donation. Every nerve in my body tightened. How much? She shook her head. That's not the problem. Then what is? Her eyes filled with terror. The person who received it. A knock suddenly echoed through the front door. 3 hard knocks. Both of us jumped. The sound seemed to shake the entire house. Knock. 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 Linda looked toward the entrance. And for the first time that night, she looked truly afraid. Not afraid of me. Afraid of whoever was standing outside. Who is it? I asked. She didn't answer. The knocking came again. Louder this time. Then a man's voice. Mrs. Parker. Linda closed her eyes. Oh God. My heart started racing. Who is that? She whispered 5 words. Words that changed everything. The money wasn't stolen. I stared at her. What? She opened her eyes. Terror filled every inch of her face. Then she said, it was invested. Before I could ask another question, the front door handle began turning. And whoever was outside apparently had a key. The front door slowly opened. My heart slammed against my ribs. For one terrifying second, I imagined a criminal. A scammer. Someone who had stolen our lives. Instead, a sharply dressed man in his 40s stepped inside. He immediately stopped when he saw me. Mr. Parker. I stared at him. I have no idea who you are. The stranger looked uncomfortable. His gaze shifted toward Linda. Then back to me. My name is Michael Reeves. Nothing. The name meant absolutely nothing to me. Linda remained frozen in her chair. Michael sighed. I was hoping we'd have this conversation under different circumstances. What conversation? His expression tightened. The truth. I laughed bitterly. Get in line. Apparently everyone knows the truth except me. Michael nodded. You deserve answers. Then he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. My name was printed across the front. Daniel Parker. My stomach turned. Michael placed the folder on the table. Everything is in here. I opened it. At first, none of it made sense. Statements. Contracts. Investment reports. Property records. Account summaries. Page after page after page. Then I saw the total value. And nearly dropped the folder. $6,842,117. I blinked. Then blinked again. The number remained exactly the same. What is this? Michael smiled softly. It's your money. The room went silent. I looked at Linda. Then Michael. Then the number again. No. Yes. No, it isn't. It absolutely is. I felt like I was losing my mind. For years we had argued about retirement. For years Linda claimed we couldn't afford it. For years I believed our savings were struggling. Yet according to these papers, we were millionaires. Several times over. I looked at Linda. You told me we were running out of money. Fresh tears rolled down her face. I know. Why? Before she could answer, Michael spoke. Because she thought she was protecting you. I turned toward him. Protecting me from what? Michael sat down. Then he told me a story I never expected to hear. 15 years earlier, after helping several struggling families, Linda met a young financial advisor. Michael. At the time, he was 29. Ambitious. Smart. And deeply in debt. His wife had recently died in a car accident. He was raising 2 small children alone. Life was crushing him. One afternoon he met Linda through a charity event. She shared Sarah's story. He shared his own. An unlikely friendship began. When Linda explained her dream of helping families facing medical crises, Michael made a suggestion. Instead of simply giving money away, invest part of it. Grow it. Create something sustainable. Something that could help people forever. Linda agreed. Together they quietly built the Parker Family Foundation. The foundation wasn't officially in my name. It couldn't be. Instead, it operated through private charitable structures. But every beneficiary was told the donations came from Daniel Parker. Me. I looked at Linda. Why my name? Her answer came instantly. Because Sarah adored you. My chest tightened. Linda continued. Every time she was scared in the hospital, she wanted her dad. I looked away. The memory hurt. Even after 20 years. She believed you could fix anything. My eyes burned. Linda. I wanted people to remember the kind of man you were. For several seconds nobody spoke. Then I shook my head. But the money? Michael smiled. The donations weren't the whole story. He opened another report. The foundation had invested in small businesses. Apartment buildings. Medical startups. Community projects. Most failed. Some succeeded. A few succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. One medical technology company alone had multiplied its value nearly 50 times. The donations had continued. But the investments had grown even faster. Far faster. I sat there speechless. Everything I thought I knew had been wrong. Then another question hit me. A painful one. I looked at Linda. Why didn't you tell me? Her face crumpled. The answer clearly haunted her. Because the first year I lied. I waited. The second year it became harder. She wiped her eyes. The 5th year I was ashamed. My heart sank. The 10th year I was terrified. Michael quietly stood and walked toward the living room, giving us privacy. Linda and I sat alone. Just like we had thousands of times before. Except now everything was different. I never meant to hurt you. I believed her. That was the problem. I truly believed her. Then why keep lying? She stared at the wedding ring on her finger. For the same reason people stay silent after making mistakes. Her voice broke. Because every day they hope tomorrow will somehow fix it. I couldn't argue with that either. Because life rarely creates villains. Most damage comes from fear. Fear grows. Secrets grow. And eventually the truth becomes too frightening to face. For a long time neither of us spoke. Then I asked the question that mattered most. Did you ever stop loving me? Linda immediately looked up. The hurt in her eyes answered before her mouth did. Never. The word came out almost as a sob. Not for 1 second. Something inside me finally cracked. Not anger. Not resentment. Something softer. Sadness. 38 years. A lifetime together. 2 flawed people carrying unbearable grief. Neither knowing how to heal properly. I reached across the table. Slowly. Linda stared at my hand. Then placed hers on top of it. And burst into tears. The kind of tears that had been waiting years to come out. I cried too. For Sarah. For lost time. For the lies. For the love that somehow survived all of it. An hour later, Michael prepared to leave. Before he walked out, I stopped him. One question. He smiled. Of course. Why did Robert thank me? Michael's expression softened. Because that's what every family wanted. What do you mean? He reached into his briefcase. Then handed me a thick stack of letters. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. Thank you notes. Photographs. Christmas cards. Graduation announcements. Wedding invitations. Messages from people whose lives had changed. People I'd never met. People who believed I had helped them. Michael smiled. They didn't remember the money. I looked at the letters. What did they remember? His answer stayed with me forever. They remembered hope. 3 months later, Linda and I officially retired. Not because we had millions. Not because we suddenly felt secure. But because we finally stopped postponing life. Our first trip was not Scotland. It wasn't a cruise. It wasn't some luxury vacation. Instead, we visited a children's hospital. Together. As husband and wife. For the first time. We walked through halls filled with frightened parents. Nervous children. Families carrying burdens they never expected. And for the first time, I saw what Linda had been seeing all those years. Hope. Not guaranteed. Not easy. But real. A little girl with bright red glasses approached us in the lobby. She couldn't have been older than 8. She smiled and handed me a drawing. In the picture, 2 stick figures stood beside a giant heart. One figure was labeled Linda. The other was labeled Daniel. At the bottom she had written, "Thank you for helping people." I felt tears forming again. The little girl hugged me before running back to her mother. I stood there staring at the drawing. Then looked at Linda. She smiled through tears. And in that moment, I finally understood something. Retirement isn't about how much money you save. It's about whether your life meant something. Whether someone is better because you were here. Whether love leaves a mark after you're gone. 20 years earlier, we lost our daughter. Nothing would ever erase that pain. But because of one grieving mother who refused to let her daughter's memory disappear, thousands of families found hope. And somehow, Sarah's light never went out. It simply spread farther than either of us ever imagined.